Hello, welcome to part 7 in my Sequential Growth Series. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this is going to cover point of view number 6. And I've tried to record this video a couple different times already, but for a couple of different reasons. It's a very full part of the flow that I'm explaining right now. It's also 6 holds a high potentiality for misuse, and so I keep getting kind of wrapped up and taken off on an angle, shadow work and negative alignments, and distracted away from the central point. So here I am trying to consolidate, hoping my best that this will be the episode that goes live. Welcome. If you're new, this probably isn't the best place to start, honestly. I would say look in the description for part 1 and watch from there, because this is the 6th perspective of the same thing. So we are looking at the same thing, which is energetic flow and movement, from different angles and a proximity, which means a distance, right? So a closeness, which sometimes it is physical distance, and we can understand it in this kind of spatial way, but also I mean a closeness as in close to the information, close to your heart, close to your spirit. And when we get further away from those things, they look different. As we grow an idea or a project, whether we're working on it alone or with others, literally, we really do start off very, very close to the central idea, excuse me, and get further away from the central idea, the body of the project, as we're helping it grow, because it's supposed to actually be its thing on its own, growing up, quote unquote, to go out and do its own thing, right? It's supposed to be getting further away from us as it gets larger and more complex, because we are not the sole provider, the sole user of the said project that we're creating. We are like parents, hopefully eventually stepping away from the project, the creation, whatever it is, for others, for it to have a life of its own, and for others to be able to interact and exchange with that away from us. At times we're not near, at times that have nothing to do with us. Negative alignments, they do not want that, and they don't allow for that. So if you're a creative person and you've noticed that you really claim the name on everything that you make, and you're really super focused on how people interpret your thing, how they use them, what they get out of it, notice that as a red flag for yourself, that's a negative alignment, and doesn't have to be like that. You can set yourself and your projects free and be much happier, and actually collect much more clean and clear retribution for your services, for your production, when you let go of things. Actually, it almost seems counterintuitive, because the negative alignment tells us that it doesn't work like that, but that's mostly because they just don't want us to exit their debt usury systems. They need slaves to fuel their system, and if no one wants to be a cog in the wheel, guess whose clock isn't working anymore? Not yours. Your clock's still going. It's on eternal energy. You're going to be waking up every morning if you're meant to, but that doesn't mean you're meant to go plug into that job. That doesn't mean you're meant to go play somebody else's game. It is actually means the direct opposite of that, in fact. But of course, we're full of negative systems around us. It's a highly hijacked negative alignment in oppressing us around the world. And here I am again on shadow aspect topics and generalities when I'm trying to stick to a point and teach, learn, because I really feel that I learn more about these things myself as I'm quote unquote teaching them. I don't find this as like some kind of mastered material that's very much established, and I'm trying to like force it onto people so that you get the right answers. that also is such a negative agenda. It's such an old model. So 2000, right? We're not doing that anymore. So the learning, teaching aspect of sharing these things that I have also been working through, coming coming along to, that I hope to share here. And as always, welcome comments, critiques, whatever the case is, as long as they're not literally abusive or just meant to be offensive. But other than that, I welcome all types of exchanges and conversations, questions, whatever. So feel free to leave comments, send me messages. I love it. If you're on Telegram, you find me over there. Send me an email. My email's always in the description on every video. Anyways, wow, past 5 minutes into the video, let's get down to the sixth point of view here. Like I mentioned already, if you haven't seen the other points of view, you can watch this one for now, but just know that we're in the middle of things here. And it's super helpful to understand what I'm going to talk about, especially because 6 in itself is the first step and link from the foundation of 1 through 4. And of course 5, which we talked about in the last episode with the lemniscat. It's very helpful to have seen the lemniscatic episode before seeing the toroidal as well, because sometimes, especially things that I have seen in the past, metaphysically aligned, and even mathematically, even people speaking from a less spiritual aspect, tend to see the lemniscat and the torus as two completely different things, totally separate in themselves. And my whole thing, epiphany that I had come to, that birthed my Taurus is a 3-part systems whole series. I did an energetic series of 6 levels, maybe 50, 60 videos, I forget now, but I'm building out a course book to refine it and make it a much better course experience and learning resource. So you can look for that in the future. If you're interested in it, send me an email, because I do have rough drafts, and if anybody is super interested in it, I'd love to share what I have already off a soundboard, off of anybody who is interested in seeing rough draft kind of stuff. So if that's in your wheelhouse, let me know. But anyways, the Taurus in itself is working to express the vision of it, the movement of it is first and foremost readdressing and offering a new take on the lemniscat. Now, just for a quick refresh for anybody who did miss the last one, I'll just say quickly, like, the lemniscat is the figure 8, like this. We see the figure 8. We have lots of these 2-dimensional symbols that we draw out, or people carved into stone, even, these for a reason, because just the flat image is like the cover of a book that if you understand, you can go and read. You understand that book. You can go see all the chapters that book outlines. And the figure 8, the infinity symbol, the lemniscat, as the mathematicians will call it, or even engineers and architects, because the lemniscat is part of a lot of mechanical things. That 2D representation, while yes, it can work in a linear fashion to create something like an escalator that just goes nowhere really, but seems like it, and it just goes around and around, but it's automated stairs to take you up the next level. The true full picture of what the lemniscat wants us to think about and remember is that it's not just this. It's not just passing back and forth and tracing outside of it. It wants us to remember what that pathway is inside of a sphere, first of all. The mathematics of it is a spherical mathematics, and it has to do with the curvations that it passes through on its sort of ultimate exterior boundaries, right? And then the secondary part of it is the calling in the center. And whatever this center twist is that is in there, it in itself this is what, scientists like to just take out God and all this stuff. I put God right in the center. And I've said that in the last couple of episodes. But this center flipping, the turning, the place that calls and pushes it through is what I call God intelligence, creator consciousness. It's a mystical, magical. We shouldn't be poking our nose in there, in my opinion. And not from an authoritative stance to say that you cannot, but from a humble stance that says that we cannot understand it because we're part of the construct, and we are in the capacity for the brain within the construct, of course, cannot understand the capacity of what it takes to create the construct, right? It's like the Oregon Trail game inside the computer. When you get in there and play it, you can choose to die of dysentery, you can make it across the river, you can sell and trade your items, you can do whatever you choose to do within the game, but it's never within the game to learn to code or build a computer. And of course, if we think about the folks that during that time period, it wasn't computer technology savvy, right? It was that would have been complete magic to them. It would have made no sense to them. It would have been sci-fi, that type of understanding and technology. And so to us right now, it's fine to say it's mystical, magical. It's out of this world. We're not at the capacity, the stages and phases of the construct where we're meant to even question or understand that. It's not part of the game. To do that would be a totally take the game in a way that's not supposed to be played, and then we have to ask ourselves, actually I need to remind myself I'm totally off subject is what I need to do. So anyways, the lemniscat has that twist and the pole flip, the magnetic change, the electric current flip, whatever kind of way we want to look at that 0 point of that mysterious happenings, that happens there. And so they're being called back and pushed away from the center point, and they do a dance. Now, and we all sort of know this, that it represents the polarity of sides, opposing sides, obviously. The key to this, and what I brought in at the end of the last video, is that what it's attempting us to understand is that this happening happens across the whole circle, and it happens in every direction. The central neutral point in the center is the actual only constant. And so the lemniscat will go this way, it's going this way, it wants us to know it's going that way. There's 360 degrees in a circle. Every degree owns its own lemniscatic flow and has the potentiality to bounce back from that way to that way and to find a harmonious solution and ebb and flow between whatever polarities are distinguished or cared to be looked at, right, by creator consciousness. Again, back to setting sacred boundaries and what creator consciousness really is. It sets parameters and it claims isness. And so essentially the lemniscat is doing that, right? Now to take it to this step up now into how the lemniscat is the torus, is that most people look at the toroidal, and we do the same thing with the torus drawing of it, is that instead of thinking we're looking at a 2D drawing, we visualize a 3D drawing as the donut, right? Most people will refer to a torus as a donut shape. And some will even mention the inner vortex, and some do understand the capacity of what the space in between is about. But most people get pretty caught up on just the donut shape. And a lot of times, even in math or even in physics and some other, some metaphysical areas, the descriptions and the diagrams and such will show this like almost centrifugal kind of rounding of energy. Like they'll show arrows around the donut like this, like it's like all going around the donut, like it has its own flow around it. And to me, that's a misconception of looking too quickly at what is happening, because I believe that it's actually the lemniscat that's happening. And so, yeah, it looks like from the outer side, like things are doing this, like coming around. And then you think, oh, well, they must go around because there's a giant hole in the middle and there's energy flowing in through there, right? They kind of, I'm not going to get, whatever, we're not going to get into scientific presumptions. Anyways, what I tend to see and would love to insert in there is that it isn't like the segregatory spinning around the outside of the donut shape. It's actually this. It is the lemniscat. And what they are only catching is this flow and this flow sort of on the outer cusping of the circumference, of this curvation that is being shown. And they totally miss the middle point and the core vortex, first of all, and then the central point of neutrality that is the center, sort of like the center of the star, the compact placement where I call God source, in there. And so I think when we sort of pull it back, and like I said, I did a whole bunch of videos on how the torus is a three-part system. And when we learn about the three-part system and we slow it down and really look at what is taking place on the different levels, we'll start to understand and break down kind of what and how that this bouncing around in every direction, up, down, side to side, everywhere, at once gets sort of snapshotted as the torus. The external toroidal is the external system, and it's part of, single part of the torus, and that is the external flow. And that flow, it goes like this, and it goes like this. And a lot of times, I think the pulsation, vibration, and the ebb and flow, people know it coordinates things. People know it's happening. But I think because it's so fast, we think that it's, this motion only or this motion only, right? But it's not, because it goes this way as well. It's really a circular gyration that is happening. And again, I think this is why the circular around the outside of the donut shape, sort of like they act like it's like a pool noodle, and that everything kind of can just like go around the pool noodle like this. And that would, that tends to make us think that the inside is nothing, or ether, or empty space. And it's not, actually. The inner system is an entire space. The hourglass figure of the vortex is its own systematic system. And what's happening inside the vortex is actually the opposite flow of what's happening with the external toroidal. And they balance each other out. Okay? And because they sit inside of each other, the effects of it, can get convoluted, and it can seem like it doesn't seem coordinated at first. But when you really break down and understand, we have the external toroidal, we have the hourglass vortex inner system, and then the third system is what I call the spirit layer. But it's the entanglement that is from that inner vortex to the outer boundaries of the entire torus. And so it's the exchange, the input and the output of both of those systems, how they work and transact between each other. That creates an overall polarity flow, a charge, a balance of the books at the end of the day, an ultimate image, so to speak, while all of the happenings are happening. It creates sort of the ultimate depiction, the stillness and the vibration. And if you look around at all of us, and even modern day scientists and everything teach everybody these days, oh, it's all vibrating. And yeah, it is. But of course, we don't see the vibration. It's not a part of the purpose, really, at our size and of what we're meant to be doing, in my opinion. But just to offer out like a little bit of a background sketch of the architecture and of what's taking place sort of at a systems level, at production level with the Taurus. The other thing that I wanted to bring up here was not just to talk about the toroidal in itself and the perspective and to showcase how the Taurus is the lemniscat, and how if we look at the lemniscat from the other angle, it does, and same thing with the Taurus. If we zoom far enough out from the Taurus, we get an oarish-like shape. We get a sphere. We get a blurry bubble, a blurry circle, right? And that takes us back to the circular view. And of course, if we understand what the circle is really showing us, we have back down into the spiral and into the staircase and into number one, this point or the linear line. I want to talk quickly about, I'll bring up my trashy notes here. Haven't shown them yet this video, but I just we've kind of walked through this so far, but I just want to talk about the basics here in the shapes and the opposing, even, odd kind of flow. So things, of course, build through phases. You know, we have instability, stability, instability, stability. Stability breaks down, back to instability. Instability builds up, we have stability. Then it breaks down into instability, right? So we have this sort of back and forth. And we have a showcase of this beautifully with odd and even numbers, right? And the flow in itself, you know, also follows this great ebb and flow of stable, unstable, stable, unstable. The great chance that 6 offers is stability out of chaos. Now, this is the first time in the phase of growth, in a stage where instability is brought in by an exterior source. And depending on how you choose to define that external source, it can be a potential to hearken into heavy negative alignments if we make it to stage 6. And that in itself is dangerous because it's a stability stage. And so when we can lock in tyrannical debt usury in the 6th phase, it can almost seem to stay forever. Because 7 is the next stage, and 7 in itself actually is special. And we'll get into that in the 7th phase. But for an unstable number, for an odd number, it is very powerful. And I'll get into that after. But basically, if it's made it to this cusp, we sort of lock it in into existence in the physical world. And also, this requires a lot of strength, focus, and an accumulation of energies that are available in a surplus to burn, so to speak, to hold the stability. Instead of using new energy to come in to create more stability, it doesn't allow new energy to come in at all, and it holds its own false perception of stability in its parameters. And this is the hexagram. This is the hexagram can be used positively as a beautifully strong tool. We see it represented in nature everywhere. It really is. positively aligned, it outshines the negative use completely. It can't even, it pales in comparison to the power of positive usage. But unfortunately, we live in a darkened world, and so it's not really fertile ground, and there isn't a lot of light to be shining around everywhere. And so compatibility for digging one's heels into bad alignments is very fertile. You know, it's really displayed out there to us. You know, everything's really hard, but you got to stick with it. Yeah, it's really uncomfortable, but you got to do it. Yeah, life sucks, but you got to make it through every day. Yeah, your job's terrible, but you have to do this. Yeah, this religional construct might seem kind of oppressive and harmful, but it's the only one, or it's yours, or it's the best one, so you got to do it. Those types of starting grounds, the foundation just being out there like that tells us in itself that the setup of the game. But also silver linings, because it's very difficult to hold that position for a long time. It cannot be held in organic reality for very long. Well, very long in a universal cosmic time scale, not a human's lifetime. But since, yeah, I just wanted to bring up sort of the hexagram and the shape of the flow here that I'm showing through the points, like die points almost. But when we get to 6, we're not going to have 6 like on the face of a dice. We're going to have 6 as in the outline of the hexagram. And this star, 2 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, this creates the outline of the hexagram. We also have, you know, probably won't name the little golden badge that, you know, might trigger my videos here, but they're named to claim in their victimhood. You know, they really, you can see how they had to really emblazon it and create an emblem around it, this great Girl Scout badge to last forever, in their victim's honor, you know, in the honor of victimhood, like forever suppression. I don't know how anybody could ever think that's a good thing. But it's upside down world, right? Meaning to say that this is a crucial part in the flow. I haven't really talked about the flow either. When I bring in to show sort of how, I'll show this really quickly. We'll talk about this when we build the numbers onto the scale, right? But I showed a little bit about another set of my notes in the last video about the lemniscat and how the numbers sit on the line. And we'll go through the flow and we'll learn about how the numbers grow through the flow of energy. And so when you understand and see that more, we can really see the anchors and the tiebacks, like the wrangling up of where it happens in the thought realm, in the qualitative value of the numbers. You'll be able to see where the energy really gets tied up, because certain patterned flows won't work, or won't be allowed, or will quote unquote, you know, be harmful to be viewed at from that angle or something. But really, that's the shadow attempting to hide the areas that are most weak in it, and to where the solutions, where the asking and the help is really needed at. You know, they will blockade that or make it look like somewhere that you don't really need to go to or can't go to at. But if you choose to really go in there, you'll find where the basic breakdowns are, and then you can find what whole number they've stolen and delineate it out into repetitious copying in an artificial manner, excuse me. And then when we break out of that, you can bring in coexistence, the third party realm again, and bring freedom into it, and help that idea, that project, that whatever the people plan is, how to actually get out of that. and we'll get there after. But really what I wanted to kind of just show is like the looping, and we're talking about the secondary loop has been created here in number 6 with the toroidal. And so this is what we start to understand about how 2 loops together create the space needed to have these exchanges happen within. But it's also important to remember that it's not just a bunch of lemniscats running around. It's not just bounce back out of nowhere. It's not just, balls to the wall. Every potentiality must be explored to its fullest. It's actually very coordinated. And when we lean in and look, we'll see again, mind, body, and spirit. We'll see the 3 different layers. We'll have an external layer, that is actionary. It is focused on the external world. It is electrically aligned. It has to do with sensory tangibility, and incoming and outgoing to the third party space. In the toroidal, in that outer system. The inner system in itself is focused on the system as a whole, and it functions and works as a negatively aligned inner pulling. Instead of being actionary and external focused like the external toroidal is, the inner vortex is internally focused, and it pulls inwards, and it has to do with resource distribution and functionality, and how the actual inner workings for the said system operates. And in between, or all around, and watching, observing, and holding space for those transactions to take place is the flow, is that spirit layer, is the pathway of the lemniscat being led. It's led consciously by the inner point. Don't forget about the central point of neutrality that is in the middle of all energy. It's in the middle of every torus. It's consequently not just the middle defining point, but it's the external boundary of the entire thing as well. And so it holds space and creates space for the happenings of that external system and the internal system to do the work that it needs to do to be it. The final thing that I will mention here about the creation of the secondary loop. So I talked a little bit about this in the 5th video about how number 5 casts out the dotted line of all potentialities. It sort of sets the circumference and sketches out the potential space for what creator consciousness sees as the ultimate reflection of 1 through 4. Now when 6 comes in and gets established, 6 is now going to outline that dotted line. And the way that it outlines the dotted line is in reverse from how the dotted line was created and cast out. And it also looks like a reflected, mirrored, opposing version of 1 through 4. So 1 through 4 could go around this way, quote unquote, clockwise, spinning, but the count of 6 through 9 is going to come back counterclockwise. See, the flow is opposing to the first flow. And again, this is why 6 gets highly inverted. 6 is stolen number that we see, especially in a repetition, that it gets sort of castrated, strangled, and forced into slavery to do the bidding of a negative system. Because it's that first standing point of this, the second loop, the strength loop. The secondary loop is really the external confirmation of everything that's been thought of and built up in the first loop. And so if you have been plotting and thinking about self-service, it's going to come back at you to serve the self. And everything that has to do with the external version, the exterior happenings, the external toroidal, is going to be flopped. And it's going to be not focused on what you want to actually do and actionary things out there. It's going to be confused and focused on what do I get back from my actions. I can't do any actions if I don't get back, because that inner vortex system gets flopped. So when the 6 decides to orient itself negatively, it tells the first loop, oh, you're not good like that. You need to go like this. You know, I can see you from over here and you're upside down, is what 6 starts to tell 1 through 4. And that's a dangerous position for a graduated number to look down on the beforehand and to tell it that it's incorrect. And it's much different than an external catalyst, like if number 5 comes in and says the incorrection is through 1 through 4. Because 1 through 4 is internally focused. It actually, the inner system is built before the external system. And so it's really focused on self. And as rightly, it should be focused on self. But it is focused on the self as in, I'm a reflection of all. This project is me, kind of how you're self-focused on your own child. It's not a selfish focus on them, you know, if you're lucky enough to be a good parent, you know, and not allowing ego or shadow to rule how you're being a parent. But for a good parent, we see a child as an extension of us. And we want what's best for them because they're an extension of us. When we serve our inner self system like that, we are kind of putting our face as a placeholder for God or for any other that we really love, or any other, even strangers. If you can take it that far, it's wonderful to say that all and every person is a reflection of you. You know, stranger, brother, alike, enemy and friend, all are to be served in the same manner, because we're all those variable placeholders for God's creation, right? But when we serve an inner system of self-building in that great dynamic with an external audienceship already, that really helps us honor ourselves, how we would truly honor ourselves. And it gets us away from self-depreciation. It gets us away from false instant gratification that can lead to malalignments within, just to actually hurt ourselves while we think we're serving ourselves. But if 1 through 4 is built happily, you know, it is a negatively oriented system in itself, but that's only because it's the foundation and it's the balance point getting ready for the external toroidal, the secondary loop, that will be actionary, that will be focused on the outside world, and that needs that hearkening deep balance of self-service to help co-create and balance correctly external service. Because if we don't have that, external service gets wrapped up in external people and it doesn't serve the self. And then it has a boomerang bounce back effect to where it negatively aligns. It creates an imbalance in our own system, and we're trying to give away things that we don't even have. So when 6 starts to get built, initially, sometimes it looks down at 4 and says, you're wrong. But when we have a strong internal balance going for ourselves and we love ourselves already, we can have bounce back conversations with this, the catalyst of 6, the perseverance of 6, and understand and speak correctly to that, and ask it to honor the external secondary loop. And that's really truly how we work into number 7, into mastery and understanding how things come together with the geometric view, which we'll bring in the next video. But of course, the 6th perspective is the toroidal, because it's very energized and it's very, I almost want to say radioactive, but I feel like that's probably just a bit, it's a bit of a facade, you know, but it's a reactive, it's very reactive, and it's very action oriented. And again, this is, you know, why it's a highly sought after hijack point of negative alignment, if you can make it that far, because most negative alignments don't make it up there. They really don't. They might trick themselves in there at 1.6, and that's what, when we start to learn how to pull back and look at flow, a lot of times this is a wake-up call, because we're in a 1.6 move, and we realize we have never grown any loop, and it's all in here. And that a lot of times is a great deflation, and it turns into a real rock bottom moment to where people can actually claim true sovereignty again and understand what their sovereign role is all about, and where they belong with their focus of attention, because one's focus of attention is highly external, and it can be easily manipulated to creating what you think is external space when really you're not allowing anybody else in there at all. And you just put a decimal in there and you're doing your own discovery in the number one in its range, and you think you've built a lemniscat. And I'll show you, I actually have a diagram. Is it this? I don't think it's that one. I feel like I have a better one somewhere. Well, I know I have a better one somewhere. Forgive me for not coming prepared to class. I drew out a number line a lot better in one of these drawings. Oh, it might be this one. No, it's not this one, but I'll show this one. But see how I have the number 0, the number 1, the number 2, and all of these dotted lines. We have 0.5, 1.5. This looping is what I call liar loops. And we get stuck in there. And this is another version sort of this, but if we were to think of this as 1, and this is all 0.1, 0.1, 0.2, we're fooling ourselves that we've created a lemniscat. So you're allowing the lemniscatic flow, so it appears like you're doing something. It appears like you're building an external reality, sort of. But really what you've done is created a laboratory environment, a sterile environment within your own singular opinions of number 1. And then you are creating faux lemniscat, patterns through 1.1 to 1.6. And this is a personal recognition that has to happen. It's intentional. It's within, your deepest seed of consciousness between you and creator, source, honestly, is what happens. A manhole cover gets put right over your own truth, and you're disconnected from your creator consciousness. And though that's the first initial lie. And then on top of that, everything just gets piled on top of, and we forget about actually opening up, actually allowing true communion space and actual communication to happen. So now I've gone on for much longer than I wanted to, and I think I've said enough. I might come back, actually I think I'll wait until we start to get into the flows, because once we get through numeric values and understand, and then we look at how numeric values flow through these, each shape, I guess I'll call it, each symbol, each flow, then perhaps I'll bring it back and we'll talk more about inversions, and we'll talk more about Taurus alignment, and the Taurus has a 3-part system, and how it balances itself with self-regulation, and how organic intelligence actually is eternal and flows that quite simply. It's only when we have inorganic imbalances that flow doesn't happen, or that we think we need more energy in order to make something happen. But yeah, I think I'll bring that in after we get through some more. So thanks so much for sitting with me for 45 minutes. Definitely gone a little longer than I'd like to on these. I hope you'll check out number 7. Part 8, point of view 7, coming out soon. Thank you so much for your time. And if you haven't seen those before videos, some of them will be in the description. At least the first one is in there already. I know that. And you can easily find the others. I did make a playlist as well on my channel for Sequential Growth Organic Math for all videos that are underneath this umbrella. So if you're interested in hearing me talk more, I have a couple of podcasts out as well, some in-between episodes where I've talked about magical math, organic math, and different ideas and ways to look at that organic building. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.